Okay, next up, Ferrari F12. So, at the time of my search for another exotic, I test drove a 458 Italia, a Lamborghini Huracan, and of course a Huracan Performante. And, first off with the Lamborghini Huracan, to me, it was just the most underwhelming experience and felt like a normal car compared to my Scud. Moving on to the Ferrari 458 Italia, it was very soft and felt like there was like a cushion on all the controls, making everything just less direct than the Scud. And then finally, ending up on the Lamborghini Huracan Performante, which was very, very intriguing. The power was just addicting and the handling was just unbelievable. It had an amazing front end grip and it had amazing traction out of the corners. The power and handling was just miles ahead of the Scud, and I really had some thinking to do. But after some careful consideration, I felt that it just didn't give me that same specialness that the Scud did, and I wasn't also too fond of the Lamborghini ethos. And what I mean by that is I just felt like the Scud was a gentleman's racer, whereas I really viewed the Performante as just a loud and crazy car. So, I respect Lamborghini as a brand, but just felt that being a Lamborghini owner just wasn't for me. So in the end, I did start to look at other options. And, after thinking about it, I knew the next car had to be a Ferrari, but had to be different than the Scud. So I started looking at their GT cars, which happened to have V12 engines in the front. The 599 had the single clutch gearbox, so I knew that I wanted an F12. I just didn't want to have a single clutch gearbox again like the Scud. And to me, the F12 is just gorgeous, and it has a Ferrari V12 in the front with 730 horsepower, and I knew it was just something I just had to experience. So, just to give you guys a quick overview, Ferrari has two main types of mass production vehicles that they offer. The first one is a mid-engine V8 sports cars, and of course their flagship front-mounted V12 Grand Tours. And because of this, they also have really two types of customers, where one type likes the mid-engine stuff and the other type likes the front-mounted V12. So back to the F12. Being all in with Ferrari now, I needed to experience their flagship product offering. So I ended up trading in the Scud and got an F12. And I'm not going to lie, the first hour of driving that F12, I was a little bit disappointed. The hood was just so long, being front engine, and the car just felt so big. But as I started to drive it more and more, I started to understand what this car was about. The night I picked it up, I went for a long drive to visit a friend, and it was just amazing how effortlessly powerful and fast it was. I got to my friend's place in no time at all and was comfortable and composed. And the amount of ground that this car can cover was just amazing. Then I started to play with the throttle. It was almost impossible to not light up the rear tires in first, second, or third gear, and it took me nearly a month to get comfortable with the car to put the accelerator to the floor. And there was just so much power that anytime I got even close to pushing the accelerator, cars around me just stood still as I just rocketed past. And then came the noise. The Scud was a screamer, but the F12 just sang. The Scud was like heavy metal, and the F12 was just a beautiful choir. And the F12 was deceptively loud. Due to the standard levels of cabin insulation, unlike the Scud, it wasn't very loud on the inside, but every time you went in a tunnel or were driving next to a concrete wall, you just realized that engine and exhaust was just belting out chords. And the dual clutch transmission was also a game changer. The days of worrying about being stuck in traffic and putting wear on the clutch in boring situations like traffic, those days were over. It was a car that I could just get in and drive, no matter the destination and no matter the route. The cabin insulation also meant that the inside was cool and quiet, and, when you needed it to be, so that way on long drives to and from the thrilling drive that you're going to do, it was easy and comfortable to get there. And the handling was also a little tricky at first, and it took me a couple months to figure it out. Whereas the Scud, you could just turn it in and follow through. The F12 required you to wait and turn it a little bit late into the corner just due to your seating position being like literally in front of the rear wheels vice the middle of the car like the Scud. But once I figured that out, and I started to gain some confidence, it became a monster when driving hard. And this is why the F12 was one of those cars that just had a huge bandwidth of ability. It was calm and composed when it needed to be, and an absolute tire shredding monster when you desired it to be. And it was all controlled by your right foot. It's a car that hides its abilities and makes you work hard to unveil its talents. It is the most complete car I have ever had the pleasure of owning, and will miss it dearly. So only now, after owning it, do I truly understand why their front-mounted V12 cars are their flagship models. The discussions around Ferrari's mid-engine sports cars and their front-mounted V12 GT cars are always an interesting discussion, with most people leaning towards the mid-engine stuff. But here's the secret. Ferrari front-mounted V12s are just better all-around cars. They will never be as balanced as the mid-engine stuff around the track, but their breadth of ability is just so wide, and it allowed me to enjoy driving it a lot more than the Scud. And as proof of that, I put on about double the mileage on the F12 compared to the Scud during my similar time of ownership. So while I gave up on the F12 for an opportunity I couldn't pass up, I can guarantee you that I have a greater appreciation of Ferrari V12 GT cars now, and will definitely have another one in the future. So now let's move on and talk about what opportunity I did get.